Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. But today, we want to talk about what technology looks like in a dictatorship. There's some real interesting news that just came out. I don't know if you're aware of it, but I think quite frankly, this is an insight into, in this case, North Korea. Because what happened was, a mobile phone was smuggled out of North Korea, and it's shedding light on Kim Jong-un's dictatorship and how they handle things like censoring their population and also basically information control. So it looks like a normal phone, and it basically attempts to curb any use of South Korean slang words and even takes an undetected screenshot of the phone of what the person's doing every 5 minutes. These screenshots are then stored in a secret folder that's inaccessible to the user, but obviously we just presume that the communist government can actually see these as well. So some of the examples of how this phone operates, and it's really interesting. So, for example, if you're in North Korea and you're trying to type the word Oppa, O-P-P-A, that translates as older brother in Korean, but in modern South Korean lingo, it actually means boyfriend. Languages change, and obviously South Korea has diverged a bit from traditional Korea. So if you are typing that, it auto-corrects you in North Korea to comrade, the word for comrade, and then a message flashes on the screen and warns that Oppa can only be used for older siblings. In other words, don't date unless the state approves it. On top of this, the word South Korea was auto-corrected to read puppet state. So if you typed in, yes, like I have cousins in South Korea, it basically would say I have cousins in the puppet state. The phone was smuggled out, for the record, by Daily NK. That's a Seoul-based media organization. And basically last year is when they got this and reported this as part of a BBC investigation. But Martin Williams, an expert in North Korean technology and information, told the BBC that such devices are being used to influence the North Korean public. Quote, smartphones are now part and parcel of the way North Korea tries to indoctrinate people, end quote. And yeah, why not? I mean, I've talked ad nauseum, in these segments on disinformation, influence control, all of these kinds of things, information warfare. And so when you are looking at any kind of dictatorship around the world that is trying to basically craft a narrative that they are the greatest and everybody else stinks, or total adherence to dear leader, that's what we're talking about. You've got to slowly move them that way over time, right? Even water, can cut through a boulder if you give it enough time, right? So he also, Martin that is, also warned that essentially North Korea, which I'm sure you know is notoriously secretive, is starting to gain an upper hand in this information war compared to the rest of the world. In 2023, Kim Jong-un tightened his grip on the country by making South Korean phrases or speaking in a South Korean accent an actual state crime. That's a huge issue. So while youth crackdown squads are seen prowling the streets to keep an eye on young Koreans, we have news of what the young Koreans are experiencing, because dissident Kang Gu-yuri, age 24, recalled how she would suddenly be stopped on the street and told off for dressing and styling her hair like a South Korean. If you didn't know, there are approved hairstyles in North Korea. Adherence to the state. Now, fortunately, she was able to escape the regime on a boat in 2023 and now lives in South Korea. And so obviously she has been a really good insight into modern technology, because they're rocking androids everywhere. They're just heavily locked down. She also told the BBC how the state's enforcers would confiscate her phone and then check through her messages for any illegal South Korean terms. In other words, you're getting stopped, your phone is getting searched for social media, for messages, for anything else, and if anything goes against the state, well, that's kind of negative. Now, on top of this, we have outside culture that permeates occasionally into North Korea. TV, newspapers, music from outside the regime is banned in North Korea. And because of this, thousands of USB sticks, micro SD cards, and other portable media basically containing South Korean dramas, K-pop songs, and other information are smuggled over the border every month, hidden inside things like fruit boxes and other ways to get these in, according to the investigation. Kang also said that it was her eventual exposure to a world beyond her home country that made her want to escape. In other words, she was consuming this media, saw that the world essentially wasn't like North Korea. North Korea is way behind, and had to get out. Quote, I felt so suffocated, I suddenly had an urge to leave. I used to think it was normal that the state restricted us so much. I thought other countries live with this control, but then I realized it was only in North Korea, end quote. And unfortunately, it is not just in North Korea, but North Korea is probably a very extreme example around the world, given that, one, they're called the Hermit Kingdom, and two, the government has an insanely tight control on it. But China is no slouch in this. Uganda's no slouch in this. We've seen other autocratic leaders, start to rise in various places, and that's when you get things like, well, let's check your cell phone to make sure that you're not saying anything negative about the leader when you're entering the country or something along those lines. This is essentially what the internet could potentially look like in a dictatorship, because that's exactly what the dictators are doing, and North Korea is kind of leading the way in that, where they can subtly change words, suddenly deliver news that is favorable only to them, and essentially shape opinions, whether it's fact or not. So this is an issue. It's not going away anytime soon. North Korea may be an extreme example, but we are unfortunately seeing a rise in autocracy across the world. And so a lot of these autocrats, they're looking at the North Koreas and Chinas of the world, and they're picking up what they've been putting down. So this is a huge issue. We'll see where it goes, but best of luck to us all. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter as Nick AESP, as long as the leaders are okay with it. Same with YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private, secure, and informed. Take care.